to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest Ben Smith. Recently, the principal at Utah Military Academy at Hill Field, and before that, the superintendent of Bighorn School District in Wyoming. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege for me to be here with you today.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to school, your first job, those types of things.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I grew up in northern Wyoming on a cattle ranch, raised on Shell Creek in the Bighorn Basin. And just really had the ideal life growing up. Rode my horse every day, shot my guns every day. It was just an awesome growing up. Went to a small high school and in Grable, and just had a tremendous experience growing up. Then went to Ricks College out of high school. And then to BYU after Ricks. Between my 2 years at Ricks, I served a mission in the Wisconsin-Milwaukee mission, and then finished up with my bachelor's at BYU. Got hired. Didn't get a teaching job right out of college in 1985, and so I spent 3 years in law enforcement on the Grable Police Department. My hometown there, worked with my dad on the ranch during the day, and then worked as a policeman at night. And did that. Then I got a teaching job after the 3 years there, and began teaching PE health and driver's ed. Second year, I took on the AD job as well. And so did that, and then ended up going back to school to Wyoming to get my master's degree in education administration, and then started into the admin realm there after 11 years of teaching and coaching. So continued to coach for 4 years. I became the elementary principal over Rocky Mountain Elementary Schools. I had 3 elementary schools spread across about 25 miles, and each one had their own head teachers, so that was nice. They kind of ran those elementary schools, but then ended up coming to Utah. Spent 10 years as principal of Ben Lomond High School, kind of in the middle of my career. Then went back to Wyoming and finished up another 8 years up there, where I could retire in Wyoming, and then came back down. While we were down to Utah, we came down to help take care of my mother-in-law, and I was fortunate to be in that role of principal at Ben Lomond High School, and I'll maybe tell a little bit more about that down the road here a little bit. But then again went back to Wyoming, and spent 2 years in Pinedale, 3 years at Bighorn High School up by Sheridan, up in Sheridan County School District 1, and then went to Bighorn 1, back to where I started my career, and was the superintendent there for 3 years before I came back down to Utah. So kind of an overview of growing up and college. Played football at Ricks, had a long career there of 3 games. Had my knee blown out in high school, and then in the 3rd game got it blown out again, and so that was enough at that point in time. So that ended my playing days, and would have, I had the desire, really was wanting, I didn't want to go to BYU right out of high school. I was from a real small high school of 200 kids, 54 in my graduating class. And so I didn't really want to go to BYU right out of high school. Had the opportunity to, but chose to go to Rick's. Spent that time there at Rick's, but my senior year would have been the year they won the national championship in 1984. So team. So anyway, that would have been kind of fun, but I don't have any regrets from where things happened and how that all went.
That's a great background. Thanks for sharing. Let me ask you about in Wyoming. Well, okay, the first question is this. If my memory is correct, so Graybill, Wyoming has got to be east of Cody. Have I got that
Yep.
right?
Yep. East of Cody, 50 miles east of Cody. Yep. 100 miles out the east entrance of Yellowstone Park.
Okay,
So
and then
about
once you
20
get to
miles from the
Graybill,
mall.
then it's another what, 50, 60 miles if you were go northeast to Sheridan. Have I got
So
that right?
Sheridan is directly east over the Bighorn Mountains. Yep. And it's about 100 miles over the mountain to
Okay.
Sheridan. Yep. So go up over the Bighorn Mountains to Sheridan. Yep.
So let me ask you then about your youth and if you what type of youth sports opportunities were there in the sparsely populated areas of Wyoming?
Yeah, so I played Little League baseball. That was kind of fun, but got into junior high and high school, played football and basketball. Then my senior year, I also did track. So I was fortunate. I was a high school All-American in football, track, threw the shot and the discus, and high jumped. So for a big old boy, that was an anomaly, and brought a lot of entertainment to the coaches across Wyoming when I was high jumping. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, so football, basketball, and track basically. Baseball is they just do Babe Ruth once you get out of Little League. I didn't continue on with baseball at that point in time, and just too much work needed to be done on the ranch. And I was fortunate. Did football and basketball. My dad allowed me to go ahead and do track my senior year, which I was appreciative and being able to enjoy that. So
And so if you're playing Little League baseball and you're in Graybill, so like maybe there's another team in town, but like where like you got road trips early, I assume.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we had, I think there was four teams in Grable, and then Lovell um, just is 32 miles away. And so there's they're a little bit bigger than we were. And so they had a few teams there, and Basin had a team. So and then Worland is 38 miles south of us as well. So but yeah, we got to travel around a little bit and learned that traveling. When people complain in Utah about having to go 40, 50 miles for a game, and they complain about that. I can remember we had games that we would go 6, 7 hours away. So when I got
Yeah,
coaching playing.
yeah, I'm sure that's right in Wyoming. My son-in-law's from Kemmer, and he
Oh
tells me
yeah.
stories all the time of the road trips they used to take. Let me ask you for a minute, Ben, about the mentors and leaders that you've had in your life that have made a difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, my dad was my hero growing up. I just wanted to be on the ranch with my dad, and I loved to follow him around, and just that lifestyle. I loved that lifestyle. But he encouraged me my senior year to start thinking about maybe doing something else. And so he was a big time driving force. I know the influence that my coaches had on me and my teachers, but particularly my high school coaches had such a powerful impact on me. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be a cowboy, then I'm going to get into teaching and coaching. And so I became a PE teacher and driver's ed, PE health, taught PE health and driver's ed. Then, like I said, I took on the AD job. But so my dad just played a had major role as far as that went. And then my high school coaches, Coach Roloff was my football coach. Coach Bill Merjeski was my basketball coach, and Coach Jensen, he was an assistant coach on both of those as well. And then I was also the track coach. So then when I got teaching, after my third year, then you might remember Joe Davis that was down in Monticello.
Right.
So he left Monticello and came to my high school at Rocky Mountain High School, where I was teaching and coaching. And him coming in after my third year, he was absolutely a major mentor, major factor in my success as a coach and a teacher from then on, and as an admin as well. He played a big time role, and I love Joe, very much in regards to that. I was fortunate to have, I reached out to another coach, Todd Dayton, who coached in Cokeville, Wyoming, and he's an icon in Wyoming, won more state championships than anybody by a long shot. And I reached out to him to help learn what I should do differently. And he was actually in my league, but he took me under his wing and he taught me things. And so he was just played a big role for my coaching days, and helping me keep things in perspective and things that were important there. So that was awesome with that. My superintendent, when I was a principal and went back to Wyoming after my Ben Lomond days, went to Pinedale, and then I went up to Bighorn High School, and my superintendent up there is Marty Kobsa, and he was an absolute awesome mentor for me. And then when I got the superintendent job, then John Abrams was a superintendent that had been in Star Valley. He was then in Pine Bluffs, and but he played a significant role in my support system as a superintendent in the 3 years that I was the superintendent there. So those are the real key players, I guess, in that played a mentoring role for me growing up, and then in my both as a high school athlete, then getting into coaching and teaching, and then into administration.
Great examples. Thanks so much for sharing. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Ben. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
That's a great question and a great thing to think about for sure. After my third year as a teacher and a coach, I got fired from coaching basketball. I was coaching. Well, I'd been head football coach, head basketball coach, and the head track coach. Started out that way. Then I gave up the head track job after my second year. My third year, I was still football and basketball, and I got fired from coaching basketball. And that kind of rocked my world a little bit, but the reason that happened was just my lack of ability to communicate with parents effectively, and the articulation that I wasn't very smart in the way I responded to parents. I was playing sophomores instead of seniors. We were having a lot of success, but the way I articulated that to parents was probably not the best way, because I just said, your kids aren't good enough, or whatever. And the way I said it just wasn't articulated in the best way. And so just building those relationships and having that, learning how to articulate it a little bit better, that played a big role in my future success for sure as we move forward from that point in time. Because when my superintendent told me that I was no longer going to be coaching, he says, you're going to get down to one sport, and then he says, you're not coaching basketball. And I says, well, what if I want to coach basketball and not football? And he says, well, that's not an option. And so it all, just went back to that with the way I interacted with parents. But getting down to just football and being the AD then for the next several years was the right thing to do for sure, to get down to one sport as well. But we were able to have some tremendous success then, going through the 90s and doing those things that were allowed us to be effective and successful with our football program there. And we ended up winning. I was the head football coach there for 15 years. So the 11 years before I became an admin, and then the 4 years I was an elementary principal, I continued to coach football. So out of those 15 years, we won 10 conference championships and 4 state championships, played for a 5th, and just had a lot of success. And so that experience played a big role in our future success.
Thanks for that. Let's have you talk now about your time at Ben Lomond. That's when we obviously first got to know each other. And when you're talking about that, I want you to mention, because my favorite, probably guilty pleasure, my favorite part was, because I was on the executive committee even way back then, was going up to the University of Utah to the semifinals and finals games, me with the UIAAA, you with the UHSAA. And you would bring those Dutch oven breakfasts. They were incredible. But talk about both of those for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was really, I really had no business becoming the principal of Ben Lomond High School. My admin experience, I'd been the AD, which is kind of like the assistant principal as well there with Joe Davis at Rocky Mountain High School. We worked together very closely. But then I became the elementary principal, but really my 3 head teachers kind of ran the schools. I managed them, and my purpose was to bring them together to get ready to build one elementary school and bring them together, those 3 staffs together. But then when I came down to Utah, we needed to come down to take care of my mother-in-law, as I'd previously stated. So I came down and I actually interviewed and got hired as the football coach at Ben Lomond first. And then the principal job came open, and the assistant principals and then Roger Howell, the AD, who was the AD at that point in time, just played a significant role in my life there and my decisions there, to where, Roger just called me twice, and he says, we really need you as the football coach. We need help with our program for sure. But he says, we need you more as our principal. So if you would, consider to apply for that position. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to get hired as the principal there. I was a hick from the sticks coming down into the Ogden area. At that point in time, we had just under 1,500 people or kids that are students. And of those just under 1,500 kids, we had 500 of those were gang affiliated kids, 100 hardcore kids, and 400 wannabes. It was quite the experience for me like I said, coming from being a hick from the sticks and coming down but I had a great team to work with. The staff was ready for somebody to come from the outside. There was a lot of different things that were going on at Ben Lomond at that time as well, that I won't go into those details, but they were ready for a change and for somebody to come in from the outside. And so they were very supportive, and they got on board and supported me. And I, there was a big division between, Ben Lomond and the district office, and Ogden High and the district office. And so I just felt like I needed to really try to represent my staff in a strong way. And so there was a lot of tension between us and the district office and those kind of things. There was different expectations for Ben Lomond than there was for Ogden High at that point in time. So just lots of experiences. I was fortunate as the principal, I got to serve, on our region board, and then I was fortunate to get on the executive committee and spend time there. Love activities. I think they're such a critical piece of our kids with their school experience, and just really want kids to be involved in activities, whatever it is. I can tell you that my experience growing up with football and basketball, and then track as well, I had some of those same experiences with choir. And I was an all-state choir kid for all 4 years in high school, and sang a lot. Used to sing a lot. Don't sing so much anymore, but just having that experience of being a part of a group and the camaraderie that takes place there and the relationships that take place there are just unmatched any other way, and just give kids experiences that they can't get any other way. And so wanting to be a part of the activities and serving on the executive committee, it was such an honor and such a great time in my life to be able to like you said, when we got acquainted with each other and the other people across the state, that was just a tremendous experience for me. And so serving on the committee, and I was talking to the directors down there, and we were getting ready for the state football playoffs and the championships there and things, and we were just talking about food, and I says, you know what? Why don't I do some Dutch oven stuff? And because uh, all my staffs all along, I've done some Dutch oven cooking for, and do Dutch oven potatoes, and love the ribs and chicken and all those different things. And so I just was talking to them and said, I'm happy to do that and bring it down for the lunch for the executive committee that's there at the football playoffs and the semis and the championship there at the University of Utah. And so I was fortunate to be able to do that together and bring that down a little bit. And that's one of the things that I've loved doing throughout my career. I started doing Dutch oven stuff when my kids were young, and just thought, I love to eat, so just well learn how to do some of that stuff. So that's been a real fun thing that I've done with all my staffs. Always do Dutch oven breakfast casseroles for when we do ACT testing for all the juniors, and feed them before their ACT test. And so that's just been kind of a fun tradition, and then was fortunate enough to be able to share some of that with the executive committee. So and I've done that, like I said, with all my staffs all along. So that's been a great thing.
Well, and it's for those who haven't had the chance, which is probably most of the viewers, I'm telling you, it wasn't just Dutch oven, it was good. It was very good. So thank you for that. Let me ask you, go back a few years. So your time at Ben Lomond, that's when you had already been an AD, obviously up in Wyoming, but Roger, member of the UIAAA. So talk about your dealings with the UIAAA even back then.
You bet. Well, like I said, Roger played such a significant role in my life when I was a principal at Ben Lomond, and I had just come from my coaching days up at Rocky Mountain High School in northern Wyoming, and gave up the AD job when I became the elementary principal. But the role that the athletic director plays is such a critical role for establishing the culture and the climate in the school. And um, so just knowing that and how important it is, I have such a conviction of the influence that athletic directors have on coaches, and then coaches in turn have on their players and their team members. And so it's just one of those things that's been a high priority for me all throughout my career, of being able to be connected to that activity piece, knowing how important the athletic directors, their role is in providing those opportunities for our student athletes and the other activities. And so just getting connected with the UIAAA, wanting to be a member of it as well, and knowing how important it is. And like I said, Roger and I worked so closely together, and he was an awesome support system for me. And then just serving on on the region board, and then on the executive committee, and holding hearings, and I conducted a lot of hearings and those kind of things. Just knowing how important that role is and that experience is for high school students and their families. Being a part of the UIAAA just made a lot of sense to me to be connected with it, as even though I was the principal, I was not the AD.
Perfect. Let's have you talk now. If my math is correct, you've been a principal of at least four high schools, not counting elementary, at least two in Utah, at least two in Wyoming, plus a superintendent. And so I've had a couple of superintendents on, but I don't think they've been principals at 4 high schools. So talk about all that experience, principal at 4 different high schools, and then taking on that superintendent job and how different that is.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Hutch. Yeah, I'm not a typical school administrator. I'm way more on the people side than I am on the curriculum side and the task-oriented side. Um, I learned early on in my Ben Lomond days, I went to a conference and went to some training with Dr. Robert Rome on personality insights and learning the DISC model of human behavior and ended up becoming a certified consultant with that. And so just the knowing the need of how important the relationships are if we're going to be of influence and if we're going to be successful, that plays such an important role. And so I'm just not, I've not been a typical administrator across the board, but having the opportunity to try to build programs and to come into situations where there was a
Mhm.
drastic need to change the culture. And so when I first got hired at Rocky Mountain High School, that was the situation there. When I came to Ben Lomond, definitely that situation there. Um, and then this last experience at Utah Military Academy, very similar to both of those. Experience at Pinedale High School is a little bit different, and at Bighorn High School, that was awesome. That was such a great experience. It was voted the number one high school in the state of Wyoming, high performing, high achievement, just an unbelievable experience there. I think in my 3 years there, I think I had like maybe 20 disciplinary issues in the whole 3 years. And I was having that every day at Ben Lomond. So, they're just such a different thing there, but being able to have those experiences, when I moved around more than I really wanted to as far as that goes, but we knew we needed to come to Utah to help take care of my mother-in-law. And so getting into that situation and then spending 10 years at Ben Lomond was a long tenure for a principal at Ben Lomond.
Right.
3 to 4 years, it was very typical as far as that goes there. And so being able to spend 10 years there and to really see the culture change. And so just that experience, just being consistent and trying to have consistency and knowing, being true to what you are about, those kind of things, and not get um, sideways with trying to do too much. Had to highly rely on, my department heads and those individuals that were the experts in their content areas. My assistant principals, I've had outstanding assistant principals through the years that have, just been really fortunate to work with. And so it's never been me by myself. It's always been a team effort. But that relationship piece has been a critical piece in helping change the culture, helping at Ben Lomond, there was such an inferiority complex and kids not believing that they were worth the effort to get a degree, that they weren't able to go to college, that they just weren't, that just wasn't in their future. And so just changing that culture and that belief system, we ended up starting a wall of fame that where we brought in individuals that had graduated from Ben Lomond that were very successful in life. And so we did that. We ended up, I built the new high school there, which was quite an experience as well. Had
Mm.
half of it torn down, had 38 portable classrooms there for a while, and that was quite the experience. But just going through that and changing the culture and being a team effort and building those relationships, that's been the critical piece, I guess, for me throughout the years.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you this. Your days as an AD are long, long over, but I want you to go back to as an AD back at Rocky Mountain High School, and then your perspective as a principal and a superintendent. How is the job of athletic administration changed over all those many years?
I would say a couple of things in regards to that. Number one is when I started, everybody was a multi-sport athlete. Everybody participated in multiple sports, and that has changed drastically. There's that individualization and getting down to one sport, club sports, comp teams, those kind of things that they go from being in season and then they go to the club season or the comp season, and they just continue in that same sport over and over and over again. I think that's been a big change through that, and not as many multi-sport athletes, which I think is unfortunate. I think it's really important for kids to be involved in, because it gives them that they don't get the burnout of the same sport for all year long, for 12 months out of the year. But giving them that change is always a good thing, and being able to, I loved my experience of going from football and then to basketball and then adding into track my senior year, that kind of a thing. It just gave me something else to think about, to develop my skill sets a little bit that way. I loved football and I loved basketball. And track I did just for fun, kind of a thing, but I had success there as well. And providing the entertainment for the other for everybody when I was high jumping, that was quite the experience as well. But just having that, and I think also the opportunities for girls sports and the other sanctioned activities. There's a lot more sanctioned activities now that weren't part of those things when I was growing up, or and being an AD and those kind of things. So I think there's a lot more opportunities, but I'd like to see more multi-sport athletes continue with that, to be able to just build their skill sets in a little different way across the different sports seasons.
Couldn't agree with you more. What's one myth about being an athletic administrator that you would like to debunk to the general public?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is there's an attitude out there that the AD job is a cushy job, that it's just it's gee, you get to go and be around sports and athletes and those kind of things, and it's just all fun. And so the AD position is from sun up to sundown. It's a busy, busy job. One of the things that created a lot of debate in my household growing up, or when I was coaching and being the AD, was that I didn't get any pay for being an athletic director. And so my wife, would hound me a little bit about, why are you spending so many hours there? You're not even getting any, money out of it, or it's not blessing us any that way. I ended up going to work, and the year after I finished being the AD got paid, got a stipend. So that was good. We got that established, but just the amount of time that it takes, it's a lot of work. Are there fun parts to it? Absolutely. But being the supervisor over all programs and transportation and those kind of things, just the consistency that needs to take place there, and those kind of things. I just think there's been a lot of changes in regards to activities and athletics over the years, that it's not a cushy job. It's a busy job. It's a hard job, and it's tireless. Lots and lots of hours.
Well said. Let me ask you this: for all those decades that you worked in the education system, what was the favorite part of your job?
Well, I would say, the relationships. It comes down to the relationships with your colleagues, and then with the kids. Just you develop such. Graduation was always a tough, tough time for me at the end of each year, because I'm such a people person, and just developing those strong relationships. And that's one of the things I missed about coaching when I got out of coaching, is not having that one-on-one personal relationship with the kids to that extent. But I think that was by far the favorite job, is just developing the relationships, it was always a great thing when you had those aha moments, when kids got it, when they learned that they could go beyond what they thought they could go beyond, they could push their limits. And when it was time to, we were able to go back to back undefeated seasons, and the following year we got beat in the semis. So that group of seniors were 38-1. And so through that process, you just saw kids get that, have that aha moment, or that reality of, wow, I can push myself beyond what I think I can, and being able to do that. And that was, just building that heart of a champion. I learned a long time ago that I couldn't motivate anybody. I just had to provide the opportunity for them to motivate themselves, and to try to figure out what was going to motivate them to push beyond their limits. And so just having that heart of a champion, and those relationships and those aha moments, those are magical.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's finish up with a couple of questions here, General Ben. The first one being, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic director. They've got to follow Ben's suggestions in order to become a successful AD. What would those 2 suggestions be?
Well, I don't know if I can do it down to 2, but the biggest thing I would say is get a mentor. Connect with somebody that is that's successful, that you can connect with, that you can throw ideas out to, and that you're open to their coaching, their mentoring, and that you're willing to follow some of their guidance and direction. I would say getting connected with the UIAAA, or getting connected with the association, both the state association and the national association. I think those are critical. Developing those relationships and those connections, with other ADs and with other coaches, and throwing ideas back and forth. We all steal ideas back and forth. When I was so grateful as a young coach when I met with Todd Dayton, and he was a guy that I played. He was a coach that I played, and that we played, and I never beat him, never once. But he was always more than willing to share ideas and thoughts, and those kind of things. And so I just think sharing that information, I think, is just so important. Establishing consistent protocols, I think, is really important as well. Being consistent, those kind of things. And then I guess the last thing I would just say is, if you don't truly understand the influence that a coach has on kids' lives, you need to do some more studying. But I think you have to sell that to your coaches, of how much of an impact they have on the lives of these kids that they coach, and whether it's positive or whether it's negative. It can go either way. And so that influence is an absolute critical piece that a coach plays in these kids' lives, and either a coach or an activity. They're the director, the choir. My choral director played that same role for me. So those kind of things, I think, are just absolutely critical.
Thank you so much for sharing those great suggestions. We'll finish with this question. What question should I have asked you, Ben, that I failed to ask you?
Well, I don't know if there's anything specific, other than, I guess, what I'm doing with my time more than anything. I have a nice garden, and I'm able to get my garden going. As I referred to earlier, I'm a certified consultant with Personality Insights, with the DISC model of human behavior. I love to train people with that. I think it's one of the most critical pieces of information that our parents can know. And I've trained my staffs throughout the years through that, and just learning how to learn about yourself and your tendencies. We all have tendencies. So you learn about yourself, and then you learn how other people, and how to effectively interact with other people. And so that training is critical for staff members, and it's critical for parents to understand with their kids as well. So I look forward to doing more training with parents, especially as well, in communities, to be able to help them understand, just our different personalities, and we see things just because of how we're put together, whether we're task oriented or whether we're people oriented, whether we're outgoing or whether we're reserved. And so those four things play a critical role. And then I've started a nonprofit organization to try to give back, working on literacy with early literacy. I've started a nonprofit called I Love to Read Utah. And so that our goal is to get books into the homes of 0 to 5-year-olds and to encourage that reading to take place in the homes. And so working on trying to get funding set up for that. And we look forward to seeing how that will grow with us moving forward. But I don't know, that's probably gave you way more information than you asked for.
No, that is great. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Ben Smith. So obviously retired now, but principal of at least 4 high schools in 2 different states, elementary school principal, superintendent. The list goes on. Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I appreciate it, Hutch. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for our listeners. We hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.